You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Kind of a shocking, grabbing headline in Seattle Times today. City of Bellevue, where I am sitting, surpasses Manhattan in median home price. What is the deal? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about it from the standpoint of, okay, so Bellevue's doing crazy, things with its real estate market. I talk about that fairly often. But, and the article is hinged around the idea of a prosperity bomb, meaning you've got all these people that have all this equity and driving up prices. That's great and all. And the explosion of effect that happens from that when you've got a prosperity bomb 2.0 ready to explode. All right. So we know that's going on. But then there's the flip side to people, normal people can't afford a real estate market like Bellevue when just a whole bunch of tech bros have come in and basically cleaned out all the shelves. And I say tech bros in the nicest of terms. It's one of those terms where I think everybody can understand what that means. It's a bunch of tech workers. And one of the huge things with Bellevue is that Seattle has gotten so bad as far as being a place where people don't necessarily want to work. There's crime. The downtown core is just run over with crime and homelessness and drugs and people selling illicit stuff on the sidewalk. So Amazon has said, and Amazon had the whole tax Amazon thing, Shama Sawant. You just really worked up about taxing Amazon. Well, that did so well that Amazon's committed to at least 25,000 of their employees coming to Bellevue by 2025. Now, so the last time I checked, there was about 10 listings in all of Bellevue, a city of, 150,000 people, something like that. You got like 10 listings. Guess what's going to happen to your real estate market as these 25,000 employees come? And it's not just 25,000 employees, because when 25,000, people are committed to the offices in Bellevue, that means you got at least another 25,000 of peripheral employees coming from other companies. Other companies come here and they want to cherry pick the Amazon employees because that's just how the tech thing goes, right? You'll be reading about Meta, which is the old Facebook, poaching employees from Amazon's division, Amazon poaching employees from this division, Google poaching employees because it's the same labor pool. So you've got this prosperity bomb exploding. So the city does really well, tax base just incredible, but normal people are not going to be able to afford their taxes. Where are all the employees that aren't tech bros, that are just normal employees? Where are they going to live? Far, far away. That's some of what we're talking about today. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here in Bellevue, which apparently has a higher median price than Manhattan for housing prices. And I read the news. Okay, let's jump into this. So not going to read the article from the Seattle Times because I know most of this verbatim. But because this is my industry, this is what I do. But Bellevue passes Manhattan in housing prices. So the thing there is we're talking about median housing prices, and Bellevue has just skyrocketed, right? Bellevue is a suburb. Manhattan, very urban, vertical. Think condominiums, think co-ops, and think price per square foot in Manhattan way higher than Bellevue. But on a 1-to-1 ratio of house versus house, whatever form that might be, Bellevue is now at about 1.37 million for the median house price, meaning half or more, half or less. And so in Manhattan, it's fallen to about 1.25 million. Now, a lot of that has to do with the exodus from Manhattan. You don't want to be, and I had one of those guys, Exodus. He's my videographer. If you caught the new documentary we did on 𝑹𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 and We Heart Seattle, that's all him. He's a great videographer, great editor, and he came from New York. His family's from New York. And so, talking with him, you've got a situation where, Manhattanites, they live on the subway, they work in high rises, everything's super dense. And when the Rona hit, all those people did a mass exodus, just kind of like all the celebrities did out of LA, right? They just all left. So you've got a drop in prices in Manhattan due to the coronavirus. And I think a lot of that will turn around. But here in Bellevue, we've had this thing where people want to get away from Seattle, the actual Seattle, and Seattle proper, Seattle addresses. Although Seattle's still got a lot of really cool stuff. People like to dump on Seattle, but in summer, I mean, Seattle's pretty, we got some weather here that's epic. Now, it only lasts about 2 days. No, I mean, it lasts about 2 weeks. No lie. We get like beginning of August through August 15th is like your prime summer. Because after July 4th, up until July 4th, it could be crappy. It could be terrible. It could feel like winter, late winter. And then, mid-August, the air starts to turn and it starts to get cooler at night and in the morning. So that's our summer. We get 2 weeks. But those are the 2 most epic weeks people experience. And if you've only been to Seattle in summer, well, you might have got sold a little bit of a bill of goods there. But yeah, so that's why people in Seattle, they like to go to Hawaii and they like to go to Phoenix and Scottsdale because it's warm and it's not warm here, not freezing here like, is going on in the Midwest and stuff like that. But it's cloudy. It's cloudy every day. It's cloudy. And like today, it rained. A couple of days ago, it rained. It'll rain, but it's not pouring. But, it's kind of tough. And so Amazon is moving jobs here, and we've got property prices just spiking out of control. Manhattan, they've had things come down because of the coronavirus and just where we're at as a society where we want to live. People don't want to live in Manhattan, but that will turn around because as people go back to the offices, which I think is coming with all these mask mandates being lifted, that is a thing. I think here in Seattle, I think in Washington, our mask mandate will get lifted. And I'm making a bold prediction here, but somewhere around the second week of March. That's my prediction. That's when I kind of think things will happen. Do we care? I was in a restaurant the other day and was getting all ready to get out my Vax card because, they might ask for it. Yeah, they didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for my ID either when I ordered a beer. Getting old, right? Okay. So, all right. So Bellevue's at 1.37 million for median price of a home. But you get a nice big suburban house, whatever that is. A lot of split entries, a lot of ramblers, single story, not a lot of 2 stories because that kind of development came later. And tri-levels, you got a few tri-levels, but think that kind of housing. Mid-century is what Bellevue is filled with. And Manhattan, those are a lot of smaller condos and smaller homes in general in big, huge buildings. So you're not really comparing 1-to-1, but the pricing on a per unit basis, that's shocking. All the way over here in upper left Northwest, Pacific Northwest, the USA, median house price goes beyond Manhattan. That's crazy. And the only other areas that are more expensive are San Francisco and a few suburbs of San Francisco. Again, you've got the tech bros. And so, families that are coming here, and, we lump them in with tech bros as well. So many of them are competing for the same housing because there's really, really nothing left to look at. And so Danny Westneat, he's the author on this Seattle Times article. And he's basically saying, hey, you've got this explosion of equity and it spills over into everything about the city. Like you've got more arts, you've got more restaurants because there's more money flowing here, but only a certain segment of the population can afford it. I was talking with Nathan, one of my appraisers yesterday, and he's like, man, would we want to be purchasing the homes that we own right now or have owned, recently and purchasing them for these prices? I'm like, no, because they're not worth it, but it's only worth it if you're in the market for it. And relative to San Francisco, where a lot of these employees are coming from, Seattle's pretty cheap because San Francisco is at 1.5 million. So that's median. So there's still way more in San Francisco than they are here in Bellevue. But relatively, Bellevue's passed up Manhattan, which is just crazy insane. But what is Bellevue going to look like in 3 years, in 5 years? Does the house that went from $1 million to $1.2 million to $1.4 million, that's now probably 1.7. Does that go to 3 million? That's kind of what you're talking about. And those numbers are insane. And there is no, except for like an Amazon type employer, there's nobody keeping up with those prices, income wise. Cause even with Amazon just, I think they raised their minimum, cap on one of their industry deals to $350,000 a year. I mean, just some crazy numbers of what people are paying for their, employees in the tech industry. And that's what Seattle and that's what Bellevue is experiencing. It's just this incredible run. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is on a monthly basis, what are we experiencing appreciation wise? And I think Bellevue is experiencing right now, January, somewhere 25%, 20%. That's with these escalating prices. And one of the things is, I did podcast last week on Bellevue home sales for nearly $1 million over list price. Now you might think that that's a one-off, but what I literally have talked to my appraisers in the last 2 days is, hey, how are you handling the appraisals on these homes that are coming in way above list price? Like what's going on? What are you seeing and what's happening? And I think everybody is pretty much just in agreement that these homes are wildly overpriced, and yet this is what it's going to take to get a house. So if you want one, you're going to pay the moon and then some, and the house isn't going to appraise because there's no data to support it. Because when the market moves 20, 25% in a month, and that's my prediction on some of these specific micro markets, that is absolutely, it's not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's wildly imbalanced. And long-term effect is that prosperity bomb goes off. And let's talk about police. Where do your public safety employees, where do they work? Where do your firefighters work? How far away do they have to go to find a home based on their income levels? And police in Seattle, they make decent money, but they're not making $200,000 a year. Well, one guy made like $400,000, but he worked his ass off doing overtime. Hats off to that dude. $400,000. That's working for your money. And that was during the 2020 with all the nut jobs running around in CHOP doing their craziness. So the prosperity bomb goes off, and then only a certain segment of the population can afford it. And it's basically just overrun with Amazon and Google and Meta. And, we've got Meta literally with walking distance from where I'm sitting, buying up, complex after complex. And where are we going to be? And what does that do to your city, to your town? Now, it kind of takes what it was once, this sleepy suburb, and dumps it on its head. Like Danny Westneat said of the Seattle Times, if you're as old as I am, and I am probably older than Danny, you remember Bellevue as the only employer was the mall. Well, that wasn't exactly true, but it was pretty close. PACCAR, the trucking company, they were here, but there was very little here in Bellevue when I was little. There wasn't a lot here. It was a suburb, but suburb doesn't need much, but it had a small downtown core, and it's been building. And with all the craziness that's happened in Seattle proper, employees have always loved to live in the East Side because it's where the fancy houses are. And then I say the East Side, that's the east side of Lake Washington. Lake Washington is a massive lake that divides Seattle from Bellevue by a couple of bridges, and away you go. But Bill Gates used to have competitions to see who could get from their East Side homes down to SeaTac the fastest in like their Lambos and their Maseratis and their, whatever it was. Back in the day, because they would race these cars in the middle of the night from the suburb homes in the suburbs down to SeaTac, and they'd have like records of like 14 minutes for something that should take you like 35 minutes because they're just going full tilt. If the cops catch him, Gates lost his license for a while. That was back in the day in Medina, and so you've got crazy stuff like that going on. Because people live in the suburbs because they want to get away from the city. Now you've got city prices, Manhattan prices. And where do people live? Where does the next generation of home buyers, where do the millennials, where are they able to purchase? They haven't had the time in the workforce to develop the equity to buy a home. So that's out. So where are they going to go? Far, far away. So you've got this city where all these employees are because it's a big employment center, and yet everybody is working super far away. That, we're talking LA. Talking to LA and San Francisco. People just commute in from far, far away. So this notion that you're going to have affordable housing, I mean, that's just not going to happen. The dynamics are such that you're not going to have any affordable housing. You can try and convince me, we're going to build our way out of it. All right. What's your new construction house going to go for? Oh, it's going to go for this. All right. Is that affordable? No. Well, then what are we talking about? Can't build your way out. The sellers who don't want to sell because they have nowhere to go and they don't want to give up their location, they're sitting tight. And they will sit tight, I think, until taxes become a massive, massive problem. Because when you have a run in values, like I said, from $1 million to 1.2 to 1.4 to now probably 1.7, I mean, and some of that is within an 18-month run recently. When you have those kind of numbers, that is at some point in time going to translate to assessed value. And people want to say, well, assessed value is always way less than the real value. Yeah, to a point. And its assessed value is always typically based on a 3-year rolling average, right? So at some point in time, that rolling average is going to come catch up with you, and people are going to look at their assessed value and their tax notice and go, holy cow, I can no longer afford this. 20 grand for taxes in my home. My taxes are just shy of $2,000 a month. Can't afford it. They got to go somewhere else because their income hasn't gone up like the tech bros. So you've got some stuff going on here with the prosperity bomb that's a positive, but there's also, and in the back of my head as a real estate guy, I'm like, this is wildly imbalanced. And then the argument, and so we know that. And one of the other articles I was looking at for this podcast was U.S. housing braces for a whirlwind year ahead. And by whirlwind, they mean, all right, so the interest rates are going to go up. We know that. The market's already, plugged those in for numbers. We're at 3.6 or whatever for interest rates, but you got no supply. You've got no supply. So prices are still skyrocketing. A certain segment of the population isn't going to be able to afford. And somebody sent me an email the other day and a message the other day. They're talking about their kids being able to afford something. And I will respond to you. I get to email as I can, but, and I might do a podcast on it. Like, what does an average family do that wants to be able to buy somewhere remotely close to where they're working? How can they make their offer? And is there ever a time where a seller sells to a nice family because they want that nice family to own the home versus, and I'm probably breaking all kinds of HUD laws here by, saying family. We can't say that, this is 2022. We can't say, image positive things. We have to keep it. So you've got this group of people living together in a home. The mom and dad are married and the children are all theirs. And is there ever a chance that group of people, trying to buy a home gets the home over, say, a single tech bro coming up from San Francisco who, is willing to pay whatever when this nice group of people, living under one home with, mom and dad. Am I supposed to say mom and dad? I can't remember. The HUD laws it's so brutal. What you can and can't say, when you're advertising real estate, you basically just now advertise hey, home for sale, come buy it. Cause you don't want to put anything else cause you might have a HUD violation or some damn thing. Anyway, so is there ever a case where that happens? And if you're a seller and if a tech bro is offering you $2 million and the nice group of people with children and, parental figures, they can afford 1.6 and you're a seller, goodwill only goes so far. That makes sense, right? Goodwill only goes so far. Cash is king. You know what I mean? You could go through so many different kind of things where you express the same thing, but money talks, BS walks, right? No, the answer is this prosperity bomb is going off, and a lot of normal people are being impacted by it. And I'm very aware of that because there is no longer housing to sell to the average person here in Bellevue. Okay. So that's one thing. My brokers, I have probably 100 and I'm guessing 110, somewhere in that range, number of brokers that work for me. That are licensed under Summit Properties Northwest. A lot of them work the peripheral markets. That's just the nature of my business model. I've got a lot of independent people who don't need me looking over their shoulders. Put in that clause. They're good brokers. They know what they're doing. They do a handful of transactions a year. They work these other outside markets. So those are the markets where people with normal jobs and normal incomes, that's where they're able to afford. And they're far out. They're far out. It's just like people commuting into Manhattan. Nobody wants to, pay $1.2 million or $1.3 million for a tiny little cracker box and, looking out at just a whole bunch of other tiny cracker boxes that are old in a dilapidated building, because that's what you get in Manhattan. Now here in Bellevue, cheapest thing I saw the other day was $990,000, and it was a little tiny rambler, and it needed a lot of work, and it was on a busy street. So it's the suburban equivalent of that Manhattan, either condo or co-op or, apartment, they call it there. Apartment to me is you rent an apartment from your landlord. A condo, you have ownership of the walls within, and the rest of the common areas you own with the condo association with all the other owners. So when people say apartment here, I'm like, okay, is it a condo or is it an apartment? They're like, well, same thing. No, it's not. They're wildly different. And it's based on ownership, but I get what you mean. It's in a building that looks like either an apartment or a condo. It's, kind of mid-rise, high-rise, whatever along those lines. So the U.S. housing braces for a whirlwind year ahead. A typical buyer found a house within 61 days last month, 10 days faster than a year ago, and a record fast pace for January. This January, you will see some of the craziest numbers coming out of the housing market. Mainstream media takes a while to catch up. And that's why a lot of people tune into this podcast, because I'm giving you numbers from conversations with my brokers and my appraisers literally like right before I started recording this podcast. So, you're hearing it from somebody that's in the market doing it. And that can be both good and bad, but I try and give you as much, input from my head that I'm seeing happen. And what I'm seeing happen is this prosperity bomb 2.0 happening. It happened in San Francisco. It happened in New York. It happened in parts of LA. And here now, Seattle is having that happen. Bellevue is having that happen specifically due to the dynamics of the marketplace. And we've also just got this no supply thing. And that's what I keep coming back to is people want to say, well, it's all going to crash. Well, you've got to have a bunch of inventory in the market to chase its way down. We don't have that. We have no inventory. So anything that comes on gets bid up because you've got 15 buyers for every home, as many as 50 in some instances. And those are, for the really premium homes that come on the market, you might have 50, 60 buyers that make an offer. So you've probably got 100, 150 buyers, and a large portion of them choose not to make an offer because they know they don't want to compete. And they know there's no way. So when you've got 15 offers and only one gets it, that's 14 potential buyers onto the next deal for which there's only 10 homes. So, you've got this massive pool of buyers that is ever growing as the employment increases in these tech-driven areas, and Bellevue happens to be one of them. So just these crazy, things going on. And so for the U.S. housing braces for a whirlwind year ahead, when they're talking about 61 days last month, that is across the United States. In the hot markets, you are seeing days on market less than 5 days. And that's basically the minute they come on, they're sold, and brokers are taking that time to bid up the property. So there you go. So affordable housing, yeah, there is none. There won't be any anytime soon unless it is built by the government and it's got rent controls, because rent in Bellevue now is like $2,500 for your average 2-bedroom. That's an apartment. $2,500. So those are the numbers you're dealing with. Just crazy numbers. But it impacts not only the people making a windfall, the people selling, but people living here because they can no longer afford anywhere close. And that's going to have some wild impacts to the marketplace. Traffic being one. And that's one thing that drives me crazy when, advocates for affordable housing want to point to, well, let's just do some really dense infill. You've already got bad traffic in this area because it's kind of the more urban area, right? So you double or triple the population by doing lots of infill, meaning you put in a duplex or you put in a triplex in a single family market. What do you think that's going to do for traffic? How much gridlock do you think you're going to experience? Because the traffic planners came up with, all right, this is our zoning. These are the number of homes that we're going to allow. And now you double that or triple that. Yeah, good luck with that. We'll see how that works out. But, these people screaming for affordable housing and, we need to do this to help out. Those people don't really care. They just want what they want. And they don't really think, okay, well, there's a reason we've got kind of urban land economics, and they worked it the way that they do with supply and demand. And if you dump a whole bunch more people in an urban center, what could go wrong? Yeah. Well, we're going to find out because that's going to happen. And it's going to be kind of like defund the police. That was a brilliant concept until it wasn't. And now it's even mainstream media is saying, you know what? Maybe that whole defund the police thing, that wasn't such a brilliant idea. Maybe that wasn't so great. So, this upzoning deal, I will follow that. And I am not an advocate from the standpoint, if you are taking a system, you are taking a built out real estate platform and you are turning it upside down. Some people say that's what we need. And I am saying, no, that is not what we need because here's what's going to happen. So come up with something else and I'll take a look at that as well. So yeah, some crazy times and crazy things happening. And I still see a lot of, is the bubble going to burst? And you've got to have a bunch of supply on the market for that bubble to burst and no buyers and buyers chasing down those prices. We do not have that, and we're not going to have that in 2022. So if you see is the bubble bursting, take it with a grain of salt and see what they're really saying, because a lot of times that's just clickbait. But Manhattan, not as expensive as Bellevue. Wild, right? Okay, that's about it for me on this one. I think I had one more article here, but Amazon to grow presence, 25,000 employees in a few years. You dump a whole bunch of employees in a market that has no inventory. Here we are. It's only going to get worse. So that is what I have to say on that for right now. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Still putting out 2 podcasts a day, Monday through Friday, 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. Thanks again for being here. We'll catch up soon. Make sure you check out our newest mini documentary. It's on 𝑺𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍 and her going around and picking up over $5 million worth of garbage for the city of Seattle, and Seattle saying, don't do that. All right. That's it. Catch up soon. Bye for now.